So now that the new Model 3 has been available in the US for over 6 months and prices on legacy Model 3s have adjusted, a question I've been getting a ton recently is, should I buy a lower trim new Model 3 or a higher trim used Model 3, or just should I buy new or used? And as someone that has owned multiple legacy 3s, has spent time in every single trim, and currently owns a new Model 3 Performance, well, I'm hoping that my insight can help in your decision making. First up, let's talk price. Tesla is offering 4 trims of the new Model 3. The rear-wheel drive at $38,990. This is not eligible for the $7,500 EV tax credit. A rear-wheel drive long range at $42,490 or $34,990 after tax credit, as it does qualify. All-wheel drive long range at $47,490 or $39,990 after tax credit. And the all-wheel drive performance at $54,990 or $47,490 after the credit. Please note this is current pricing as of the beginning of August 2024. Now, a few things to note about all these trims. The rear-wheel drive non-long range is the only car that can and should be fully charged daily to 100%. So you will get that full range for daily driving, whereas all the other trims you should really only charge to about 80% for daily driving, like 80% max, but in reality, the closer you can keep it to 50, the better. Both rear-wheel drive Model 3s are nerfed in terms of cheaper materials. If you get the black interior, so the door cards is like this kind of suede instead of like an Alcantara. The sound system isn't as good. They only support up to 32 amps of level 2 charging, though the long range rear-wheel drive may do more. We're just assuming because the battery in it is the Panasonic battery, which we have seen what it can do, but they may nerf that. We'll just have to wait and see. And then the charging speed for DC fast charging, the rear-wheel drive is capped at, it's either 170 or 180 kilowatts. And the new long range may be the same way. We'll just have to wait and see. And lastly, if you do not qualify for the tax credit and you are planning to get the all-wheel drive long range, well, you should kind of lie and say you do initially qualify, so you get a long range all-wheel drive with the Panasonic, like the better battery compared to the one that was coming in the all-wheel drive long ranges. Because if you tell them that you don't qualify, then they'll give you the worst charging battery. It just has a bad charging curve. But of course, that really only matters if you're supercharging a bunch. Now, I do want to quickly mention that to celebrate Tesla dropping the interest rates on all new Model 3s, Test Stuff is running a 15% off everything until August 6th. Just use code 1.99 to take 15% off of your entire order. We got screen protectors, all other floor mats, inserts, and dash light strips for legacy 3s and current Ys. And just honestly everything that you're going to need for your new or used Tesla. Yeah, 15% off through August 6th, code 1.99 at teststuff.com. For used prices, and while it does vary on a lot of factors, these are the averages that I've seen right now from places like Carvana, CarMax, and just the you know those types of places. So yes, you can probably find local dealerships around you for maybe better or worse prices, but those are kind of the ones that I see everyone shopping at. And I'm only going to be including 2022 and 2023 with around 20,000 miles or less, because if you are looking at new versus used, this is probably your criteria. Like, you're probably not shopping for a new Model 3, but also considering like a super old 2018 with like 150,000 miles for like $15,000. First up, 2023 year. Performance, you're looking at anywhere between 37.5 to roughly low 40s, so like 42, 42.5. Long range, we're looking at mid 30s to like upper mid 30s, so like 35 to 37. And then standard ranges, I've seen most in the low 30s, so like 30, 31, 32. For 2022's prices are very similar, just subtract a few $1,000s, and to be honest, it's probably because of what we're about to talk about. So like 35 to 40 for performances, 32 to 35 for long ranges, and I've seen standard ranges for high 20s. Now, used cars can also qualify for up to a $4,000 tax credit, but there are like a bunch of criterias that you have to meet that aren't as loose, I guess you could say, as the $7,500 new EV tax credit. First up, it's got to be $25,000 or less. It's got to be at least 2 model years old. So you'll like right now, you won't find any 2023s qualifying for this, and a bunch of other things. Like the income cap is pretty much halved compared to the new EV tax credit. I feel like people that are actually considering new versus used, the savings that they're looking for is in buying used and not getting a tax credit, because to be honest, you're really not going to find a tax credit on a 22 unless it's like super high mileage. Now, I mentioned the 22 and 23 weren't really that far off in price, and well, that's because there's not really any differences between them. Really only one. 22s have ultrasonic sensors, whereas 23s don't. This used to be a major annoyance as non-USS cars didn't have any sort of like parking assist, or it was just really, really bad. But they do now, and it's actually like this like 3D environment world. And I'm not gonna lie, like it's good enough, but it's not as good as ultrasonic sensors were, at least in my experience. If you go back further than 2022, you'll notice that like same year cars are gonna have different features and little changes. Tesla was known for making little changes here and there every few months. They weren't like traditional car manufacturers where they hold everything for a new model year. No, they would just introduce stuff when it was ready. But, and this is my theory, they stopped implementing changes during 22 and held everything for the Highland. In my opinion, because they're pretty much identical vehicles, and the 22 at least has the option for USS, and you can also like flip a switch and use the vision-based like 3D building one for your park assist, I think that the 22 slightly edges out the 23. But at the same time, Tesla could always just like completely disable USS like they did with radars, and at that point then there literally isn't a difference. Now, as for legacy versus new 3, well, the list of changes is pretty massive. You have the obvious surface level changes like the front and rear redesign and updated interior. You got ambient lighting, ventilated front seats, you got a rear screen, you got a steering wheel with no stocks, which is actually kind of controversial. I've seen some people say that they are buying a legacy 3 simply because they don't want to not have stocks. And then I've seen some people say that they actually like the no stocks and that's why they're buying a new 3. I personally, after owning a car with no stocks, don't care. As long as they actually work and they're not getting stuck because they're capacitive, then I don't mind them. In fact, most people I know that actually own these no stock cars don't really care. You kind of just get used to it. For the changes that you're not really going to see, ride quality is improved via just a better suspension, and the new ones are a little bit more quiet, but not by much. However, the new ones are much better put together in terms of rattles and squeaks. So far, my new 3 has 0 rattles, and fingers crossed it stays like that even when it gets cold, because my last 3, it rattled even during the summer, but when it got cold, it rattled a lot. So I'm hoping that this one has no rattles now and it's going to have no rattles then. The sound system, assuming you get a long range or performance, is better than the legacy long range and performance. They just have more speakers. However, the driving feels the same. It feels like a Model 3, accelerates like a Model 3, handles like a Model 3, charges and goes relatively the same distance as a Model 3. It's very much still a Model 3, excluding the performance. That one does feel a little bit different in those areas. I mentioned this in my last video, but when I'm just staring out the window and driving my new 3, you could blindfold me, and before I hit the barrier and crash, I wouldn't be able to tell you if I was in the new one or the old one. The software, battery, and drivetrain is really what you pay for when you buy a Tesla. And all those things have been super well like calibrated and just really good for a long time now, like honestly dating back since the release of the Model 3. As for autopilot and full self-driving, well, you know, 22, 23, the new 24s, they all have the same software, and they can all do the full self-driving the same. And even though the new 3 does have hardware 4 versus hardware 3 in the legacy 3, I've personally not been able to tell a difference. Now, I did mention the performance does feel a little bit different, and if you are considering the new performance versus the legacy, it's even more changes. It's a tad bit faster down low, a lot faster up top, and maintains top end power for a lot longer. It has better suspension because it has adaptive suspension, handles a ton better in the corners, along with some other design changes. First up, the Refresh rear-wheel drive, and by the way, I am mainly going to be speaking to US purchasers here because of the tax credit, but I will be also talking about non-tax credit. So I guess this could also apply to other places. And while this is definitely going to be a hot take, it's going to probably upset some people. And I don't mean it like that, but I just really don't recommend anyone buy this car. It's the lowest range, isn't the best in super cold climates, has a worse warranty at 100K versus 120K, slower AC and DC charging. It doesn't qualify for the 1.99% special financing Tesla is running until August 31st. Plus, it doesn't qualify for the tax credit. And I know some people will say that, well, the way that the LFPs are, they'll last longer, right? But I mean, to be honest, all these cars are already going to last you like 10 years as long as you take good care of them and nothing fails. So, I mean, like, who really cares if this is going to last you 20 years? Like, I mean, if you're buying a Tesla now, like, you're probably not the type of person to keep your car for more than like 5 to 7 years. Like, maybe you'll stretch it to 10. And even if you don't qualify for the tax credit, and this is technically the cheapest Model 3 that you can get, look at a used 22 or 23 long range or performance. I would 100% take that over the new refreshed normal rear wheel drive. My opinion stays the same with legacy rear wheel drive standard ranges, as they are also LFP, assuming you don't go back before 22, unless you can get a crazy good low mileage one for right at like 25K so you can get the credit. Like, if you can find a 2022 with even up to like 30,000 miles for around $20,000 post credit, I'd say honestly that's kind of worth it. And please keep in mind, my opinion on the rear wheel drive mainly stems from the fact that the rear wheel drive long range exists. If that didn't exist, then my opinion on the rear wheel drive would be a little different. The rear wheel drive long range is up next, and no surprise, I think this is the car to get for like 90% of people, right? Post credit, it's the 35K Tesla that everyone has always talked about. In comparison to the rear wheel drive, it's almost 100 more miles. Like, this thing is the longest range Model 3 that you can get. It's over 360 EPA miles, which, I mean, I know the EPA doesn't really, but you still get what I'm saying. Like, it still has a crazy range. It's got the better warranty. It's got full 250 kilowatt DC fast charging and not limited to 32 amp AC charging. And it's still a sub 5 seconds on the 0 to 60 compared to the old one, which is like almost 6 seconds. I'm gonna be honest, if I didn't do this for a living and I was just a regular person looking at switching from like my gas car or like my hybrid to a EV, this is the one I would get. $35,000 over 350 miles. Assuming that I didn't need the space of like a Model Y or something, this is the EV I would get. The only problem with this car is that post-tax credit, the price is kind of too low. And what I mean by that is it's right around what long range and performance 22s and 23s are. If you are more concerned about range, then I would still stick with this car over like a Legacy 3 long range. However, if you want more performance, then I would look at going out and test driving some Legacy 3 performance. It's kind of just comparing them, seeing if, you know, that extra speed and everything is something that you value more. Now, if you don't qualify for the tax credit, I personally would not pay here in 2024 over $40,000 for a Tesla that only has one motor. I would personally step up to the all-wheel drive long range. And plus, I mean, if you don't qualify for the tax credit, assuming it's income based, then you probably make good enough money to where you could spare an extra $5,000 for, in my opinion, just an overall much better vehicle. Just make sure you get the tax credit battery one. You get the better sound system. You get the nicer interior door cards. You're getting the faster 0 to 60 with the option of acceleration, or at least I think you can get the acceleration boost. Maybe they're still working on that. You're getting the all-wheel drive. It's just overall, it's just a better vehicle. I would say that the all-wheel drive long range is peak Model 3 for most people. Like, it's 95% of what the Model 3 is capable of over, you know, something like the performance, which is $7,000 more. Like, you're getting 95% of that for $7,000 less. Now, if you're watching this in the future and Tesla has pulled the credit and they've went back to just the normal all-wheel drive long range and not the one with the good battery, then it's kind of up to you. I still think this is peak Model 3 for most people, but at that point, you're paying $47,000, where if you step back just 1 year, you can save upwards of like $10,000. So I would kind of just go and test drive some used ones and just kind of see if you think all the changes and everything are worth the extra $10K. As for the performance, which is definitely the hardest one to argue because it is the one that's furthest away from the previous year in terms of price. You are going to be paying roughly about $10,000 if you do qualify for the tax credit, all the way up to $15,000 if you don't qualify for the tax credit, over what the used Model 3 performances are going for. However, for that 10 to 15K, you're not just getting all the new Highland stuff, you're also getting all the new performance stuff. I feel like most people interested in the performance now that the long range all-wheel drive can qualify for the tax credit are performance people that will pay that premium, and they probably aren't comparing it to legacy performance 3s. Most people that I have reaching out to me that are performance people that want the performance Model 3 are asking me about what I think about it compared to like plaids and stuff, like used plaids. I personally think that the new performance is worth the extra cost over the legacy Model 3 performance, hence why I bought one. Now, of course, the night before this video was set to go live, Tesla dropped interest rates for a limited time to 1.99% on all new Model 3 trims, excluding the just normal rear-wheel drive. So if you did plan on financing, this could be a huge price cut over buying used with used interest rates, which are even higher than new interest rates, which were already at like 6%. Like, the lower price of legacy and used may not even be worth it with this promotional APR. So just make sure you're comparing post financing and, monthly numbers. These videos are always a little hard to make because something being worth it and just the value of $1 can just vary drastically from person to person. Like, some people will see that $5,000 jump from the rear-wheel drive long range to the all-wheel drive long range and think that that's way too much and it's totally not worth it. And then some people will see that and think that, wow, it's only $5,000 to jump from that. Of course I'm going to do it. Let me know your thoughts on what you would do or what you have done down below. I don't really think that there's a wrong choice, just a personal choice. If you are new around here and you do want to see more Tesla related stuff in your YouTube feed, then feel free to subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.